What's up guys, this is Chetty. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the adapter pattern in C#. And the adapter pattern is incredibly common. And the adapter pattern is not hard to understand. The part that you want to understand before you get into learning the adapter pattern is make sure that you know which one is the client and which one is not the client. And this is going to be the example of the client in our example. This is going to be the not client, and I'm making the network the client because we've kind of been doing a lot of network examples. So the client is going to be the network in this case, and in the not client, the one that we are trying to get to work with, is going to be the data processor. Both of these are just total, just stupid examples that you would see almost in like a real environment, and just make sure you know the difference. So whenever you learn the adapter pattern, they give the example of it like an adapter, any type of adapter. Like if you go to Europe and you're from America, you need to bring an adapter so that you can put your plug into the wall. Or if you own a Mac like I do, and you are just totally, you have to buy all these crazy adapters because now Mac only like supports these crazy, adapters that are proprietary to their technology, and it's mind-boggling, and it's borderline scam, but you buy into it because you have to. But I'm going to get off my soapbox. Let's not talk about that right now because that could turn into a heated discussion incredibly quickly. So we're going to build an adapter. When do you even use an adapter? They give a lot of examples, but you use an adapter when you've got two pieces of code that you need to work together, and it's not that you're too lazy to code it. You could be too lazy to code it, but you don't want to go back and rewrite all that code because it doesn't make sense. So you've got a code base over here. You've got a code base, I've got my hands here. So you've got one code base over here, or you've got one project over here. You've got another project over here. You have some type of code that's interacting with them, and you don't want to go back into the other code base and try to get it to work because you're going to have to tear out the wall. Like I call it, you're going to have to tear out the wall. And it kind of makes sense. Like, why do we even have, these adapters that we have in Europe, or, the Europe to America electrical adapters, is because you don't want to have to go into the hotel room and tear out the wall. It's way easier just to build like an adapter to get it to work. And that's like the whole entire point of it. So I'm going to go ahead. Enough talking, and we are going to go in here, and we're going to go into our design patterns. And Visual Studio is taking forever to start up. Okay. So go in here. We're going to go down. We're going to go into our folder, and we're going to make an adapter folder. So we're going to go adapter, and I spelled that wrong. So adapter. Sorry. Okay. And we're going to go in here, and then we're going to create a network folder. So we're going to go network, and this is going to be the client. And then we're going to go here. Then we're going to go into our data processor. You could call it data pros. And we are going to create our first. Let's actually start with the network first. So we're going to go in here. We're going to create the network, and we're just going to create like a little fake network utility, just like we always do. So we're going to go in here, and we're going to call this network, and we'll call it client too, just so that we can distinguish. Like I said, make sure that you are correctly distinguishing between the client and the actual non-client. And I don't actually know what the non-client would be, but I feel like I've correctly conveyed like what a client can be. So maybe if you know the difference between like what would be the opposite of a client, feel free to drop it down in the comments below, because that could help other people and would help me as well too. So okay, we're gonna go send request, we're gonna go string, and we're gonna go IP address, and we're just going to put a string in for our fake IP address, and we're going to console.writeLine and go in here and say network client request sent. Network client request sent. Then we can put a space right here and we can just put the IP address. And let's put it 2, just so we know that it's to IP. Yep. Then we need to make this void because we're not actually returning anything. And then let's go in here and let's create our interface. So we're going to go in here, we're going to create an interface, network client, and we need to make an interface for this because we are going to be bringing this into the adapter. So we go in here and let's see, the network client, and you can just copy this, go into the network client, put a colon, then we're going to go into our data processor and we're going to do data processor. And I think that might not be spelled right, but it doesn't really matter. So, okay, so for our fake data processor, and I accidentally made that a interface. Okay, so our fake data processor, we are going to just have like two dummy methods, and this could be a database, this could be some kind of just script that's doing something nice to your data. Maybe it's cleaning up your data, maybe it's sanitizing your data, and we're just gonna say .line processed data. Then we're gonna go here and it's gonna return true. And this is where okay, so pay attention, this is where it's gonna start getting interesting. So in our network client, we have a send request, and then in our data processor, we also have a send request. So string, actually, let's just make this void and send network request. And it's going to take the exact same thing. It's going to take a string IP, and it's also, this is very important, it's also going to have an API key. Just for, like I said, shits and giggles. It's not, there's nothing, the key point is to notice that the send network request is very, very similar to the network request, but it has just one more thing added to it. So send network request with IP address and IP and that requires API key. And we're not going to put the API key in there because even in a fictional data processor, that would be terrible security. So we're not going to put the API key in there, but just recognize that there's very little difference between the network client and the data processing client, but this one requires an API key. And imagine if you had to go back and change this, or imagine if you wanted to adapt this send request to the network client, and maybe you have this API key and you're just sitting there thinking like, well, how am I going to do this without an API key? And you're probably not going to, because that's not going to make sense, because you'd have to, number one, you couldn't change it because you need the API key. And number two, if you could change it, that's going to take so much time. That's going to take so much effort. It does not make sense to do that. So you come up with a plan. There's always a plan, right? Okay, so we go in here, and I still have to add this interface. We still need an interface, data processor, and there's not going to be really any big thing. We're just going to have to come in here and go right here. And then we have send network request. Okay, and it's a void. Great. So I got save, and also make sure to bring in the iData processor and no red lines. So I think we're good to go. So we come in here and then we just make a network adapter, or you could call it network processor adapter, or you could just call it adapter if you wanted to. And you could make up your own if you want to. So we're going to go in here, we're going to go into the network adapter, and then we're going to start figuring out how we're going to, which side are we going to have. And remember, the client side is the one that you're going to bring in the interface with, because that's going to be the one that you're trying to bring in the code. You want your data processor to be like your network client. And remember, that's a very important thing. You have to think kind of abstractly about that, and you kind of have to think really hard about like which side is going to be the one, but the client is going to be the one that you are trying to adapt to, and that's the one where you're going to bring in the interface, and then we're going to implement our own interface. And it makes sense because so what you're going to do is you're going to bring in the class that you are trying to modify, the data processor, and you're going to bring it in as a dependency. So iData processor, and it's actually kind of cool. It's makes you wonder how people come up with stuff like this. Like, I'm always amazed at how people can be so creative in software development that they come up with stuff like this. So we're going to assign this property, or we're going to assign this as a field. We don't want a property. It's going to be private read only, and we can make this, I think this will look a lot better, underlined. So we'll come in here, we'll make that underlined. And remember, we still want the iNetwork client, but we need that API key. So what you would do is you would just come in here, you would have API key, and you would, put your API key down here. That's probably not the best security, but you kind of get the picture. Then you come in here, IP address, or we would have our IP address just like this, and then we would have our API key just like that, and we're not returning anything, so we're just going to return a void. Okay, and isn't that awesome? Isn't that elegant? So we've pretty much like retrofitted our code, and now we can have this data processor that had the API key, and we can still even have our interface, and we can still have all the flexibility that we want to, and we can have all these awesome things, and we didn't have to go in there and rewrite just pretty much everything and like screw up all of our code. Okay, so next thing, now we need to actually implement it, and the implementation really isn't that difficult. So we're gonna come in here, we're gonna go network, and we're just gonna test out our network just to see like what our network looks like. So we go new, we'll go network, go network, and IntelliSense is going crazy because I haven't brought in my dependencies. We go in here. Let me see. Oh, it's supposed to be client. And it's trying to bring in our network utility. Okay, so adapter. Yep, bring in adapter.network. And same thing. Oh, network client. I'm still trying to bring it in from the other place, so we're gonna go here. Network client, design patterns, adapter network, and we've got some kind of error. Explicit conversion exist. Let me see here. There's some kind of error. Oh, okay. I didn't bring in the iNetwork. Okay, and then we're going to come down here. We're going to test our network dot send request, and then just put in a fake IP. Then we're going to come down here, iData processor. Then we're going to bring in our data pros, new data processor. So here we go. And I think the same thing's probably happening. iData processor. And we can't instantiate that because it's not actually instantiatable. Send network request. And then we're going to do the same exact thing. So the data processor requires that extra API key. And then we're going to go here, just put in the fake API key. Then we go down here, and now we have our adapter. So we go in with our adapter. It's equal to adapter, new adapter. And because we have this dependency in here, remember, so we have to call that network adapter. We have that dependency injection. We have to actually put in our data processor. And just to kind of show you what I mean there in case you don't understand what that is. So you go in here. If you look, we have that data processor. In order for this to even actually work, because if we don't actually pass in, and this happens a lot in my other videos, so I like to always explain this to people. Whenever you have this constructor, you will notice in the constructor that there is this dependency injection. So if you instantiate this and this object is not in there, this thing's not going to be in there either. And that's the reason why you get a lot of those errors. And it also demonstrates too how dependency injection even works. So I always like to explain that. So now we have our adapter, and now we can send request, and then we can go 8.8.8.8. And our API key is going to be in there. We get all of the flexibility of our interface, and we have all of this awesome stuff in here, and we didn't have to go back and change the code or do any other finagling. We can just pretty much we just built a nice little adapter for it, and this is going to work a lot better compared to, like I said, tearing out the wall. So we go in here. Let's just go ahead and step through it, make sure everything works. This network client request sent to IP 8.7.7. Send network request with IP address that requires API key. Then we go down here, and very last one, the last one is executed, and it has the 8.8.8.8. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and as always, thank you for watching.